Joining us now to discuss the press conference's highlights is France 24 reporter Clovis Casali, who reported from Ukraine during the beginning of the conflict. Clovis, Zelensky tackled a wide range of questions from these reporters, from the political to the personal. What stood out to you?
Well, he really didn't shy away from any of the issues. He gave straightforward answers. Various topics discussed. He did say if all of Ukraine's partners do their homework, victory is inevitable. He also said there was a risk of World War III and that needed to be avoided by all means. How can that be done? Well, he believes in multilateralism still. He believes it's a great thing that the UN resolution passed recently asked for Russia to leave Ukraine, with 141 members voting for that resolution. But some notable exceptions, neutral, if you will, nations, India, China, and those nations need to be convinced. China, a key player in the world, of course. And Volodymyr Zelensky said that he was ready to put his diplomats working 24 hours a day to convince China to back Ukraine, to push for peace. But there are some red lines. Volodymyr Zelensky basically says it's very simple. He says you need to respect our right to live. Stop bombing us. Stop bombing on infrastructures. Message addressed, of course, to Russia. Stop killing our people. And then we will say in what format, diplomatically, we can end this war. He said that all of his partners, all of the allies needed to unite, back him, provide Ukraine with more weapons, and that would help Ukraine win this war, at least gain an advantage on the battlefield, and then possibly negotiate with Russia. But one very important thing for him is, of course, for Russian boots to leave Ukrainian soil.
Mm-hmm. And we did see him get emotional at times as well, especially when he was asked by a reporter what the hardest moment of the war so far has been for him.
Yes, what was your scariest moment? And he very clearly said the massacre in Bucha. And he was emotional when he mentioned that. Another journalist asking him, what was the greatest victory? He said, the greatest moment of victory, well, when victory is actually achieved for Ukraine. He was asked, what were the biggest mistakes you made? He said, I'm only human. There are always mistakes made, but I can't afford to make big mistakes because the fate of the Ukrainian nation is currently in play.
Clovis, you were in Ukraine, as we said, at the beginning of the conflict. When you reflect on that time now and looking at it in retrospect 1 year later, how does it feel to you?
Well, it's very clear that you did have US intelligence. You did have British intelligence warning that an invasion was imminent of Russia. But no one believed that. We arrived in Ukraine on the eve of the invasion on February 23rd. We arrived in the evening. It was one of the last planes before the airspace was shut. During the night, my colleague Rob Parsons, because he was covering for the English channel, I was covering for the French channel, France 24 French. And basically, he knocked on my door. He said, wake up, the Russians have invaded. We came out of the hotel, started reporting, doing lives, explaining what was going on. It was a very weird atmosphere, tense, of course. You could see the shock in people's faces. Ukrainians couldn't believe that the Russian neighbors were invading and weren't just attacking the east of the country, but were invading from all sides, looking to go straight to Kyiv as fast as possible and seize Zelensky, basically overthrow the Zelensky government. And one little anecdote: the hotel that Thursday telling us we're gonna have to evacuate because all of our staff is fleeing the city of Kyiv, trying to leave Ukraine. The following day, we went out on the streets of the Ukrainian capital, and we met with some Ukrainians trying to stock up, trying to buy food because they were worried a siege was going to happen. We're going to listen to two of those interviews we made back nearly a year ago. It seems we don't have those interviews. Basically,
perhaps you can tell us what they
the
said.
Interviews was basically first a man telling us that he had spent his money, paid double the price to buy socks and various gear for soldiers, people who had joined the army because of this invasion, regular citizens, if you will. And then a woman telling me, They tell us not to be scared, but we are scared every day. We don't know what's going to happen, and it's difficult to. We try to reassure our children, but it's just difficult because we are ourselves scared. And that was what a lady was telling me a year ago in the streets of Kyiv.
And most of the world in those early days didn't expect Ukraine to be able to withstand Russian forces for more than a few days, something that Volodymyr Zelensky has referenced multiple times today. But tell us about the mobilization that you saw in Ukraine in the early stages of the war.
As journalists, we expected the Russians to move in swiftly, to reach Kyiv in huge numbers. You did have some saboteurs, some cells in Kyiv before the invasion to try to create chaos, to prepare the arrival of the troops. And you did have some fighting on the outskirts of Kyiv, but you didn't have that mass of troops arriving to take over Kyiv, and that was a surprise to many, and probably to Vladimir Putin himself, who really thought this war would end in 2 days with victory for the Russians. That, of course, wasn't the case. It was surprising to see regular Ukrainians, teachers, engineers, civil workers, civil servants, just take up arms, take up rifles. Some maybe had never used them or were just trained that day with the weapons. People flocking to police stations to pick up weapons, as Zelensky offered them to the Ukrainians. And you just had these impromptus roadblocks everywhere, in the capital, around the capital, to try to basically prevent the Russians from arriving and try to control the territory. It was rather moving to see all of those civilians really stand up, take up arms to defend their territory in the face of the military might, that huge and powerful Russian army.
A story I'm sure you will never forget for the rest of your life. Thank you, Clovis, for sharing those memories with us. France 24 reporter Clovis Casali, thank you.